Thank you to Red Art Games and Square Enix for providing the code. Romancing Saga Minstrel Song Remastered International Edition.
That's a meaty mouthful.
I didn't even know this was on the docket, but I got a code, and hey, we're reviewing it, which I've always wanted to play this game anyway. So, hey, this was a good chance to actually sit down, give it a good run, and by that I mean a couple of runs, and see how it plays. So, let me go ahead and give you my thoughts, and just so you are aware, yes, I did get provided the code for this one. No, I'm not going to shill for anyone. You're going to hear my personal thoughts, whether I like it or dislike it. And the developers are just going to have to deal with what I think. So, you know, for better or worse, let's get down to it. The Romancing Saga Minstrel Song Remastered International Edition is a new version of the Romancing Saga Minstrel Song, which is a remaster of the original Romancing Saga, which was released on the NES many eons ago. And this time around, we got a lot more stuff added to it. By that I mean we have extra languages. Originally, it was English and Japanese, but now we have German, we have French, we have Italian. And I mean, this game is now available for a lot more audiences. There's a lot more to it. There's a lot more availability for people that are interested, that don't speak Japanese or English, and now we have both Japanese and English audio. So that's pretty cool. There is a lot of voice acting in this game that you will notice. I mean, talking to random townspeople, every single one of them were voice acted, which I thought was actually pretty good. You don't really see that a lot. Now, let's get into the big point, which is the gameplay. There are some things that I really like, some things I really don't like. One thing I do like is that when you start, you choose from 8 different characters. Each of these characters has their own story, which, I mean, if you've seen my previous videos on Octopath Traveler 1 and 2, I don't really like separated stories very much, but at the same time, they're separated enough that, I mean, it's not like you're bouncing around from story to story and you kind of have to figure out, you know, okay, so this is what happened last time, this is what's happening this time, but wait, what about this person? What about that person? Did this happen in their story, or did that happen in their story?
Where am I? What year is it? Is The Rock president?
None of that, thankfully. Now it's just straightforward stories per person. Some of my favorites were definitely Albert. He's probably the easiest one to start with, but as far as designs go, Gray was one of my favorites, as well as Sif. I thought Sif had a really cool design, just very broad shoulders, which was a little off-putting. That's a me thing. Anyway, as far as the gameplay goes, once you get into the game, the world is pretty open, but it plays a lot like Romancing Saga 2, Revenge of the Seven, in which there's open areas, there's open towns, but you'll also have to go through like a map to kind of figure out where you're going to go. While you go to these different areas, there's different missions. In every single town, there's side quests and things to do, new characters to pick up, but be careful when you're picking fights with monsters, because there is a built-in clock that you don't know anything about, because the game never mentions it, that time will move forward as you pick these fights with monsters, and you can end up missing some pretty big side quests that kind of help flesh out the story a little bit. That's something I didn't know until it was a little too late. I started with Albert, then I went with Gray, came around the second time and made my way through, and I made sure that I wasn't grinding as much, which this game definitely doesn't necessarily discourage, but it doesn't encourage grinding by any means, because like I said, you can miss some things if you do, and that's one thing I tried to stay away from, was the grinding. That is one thing that is both hit and miss here. Some people like the grind. I don't love the grind, but it definitely has its benefits in that you can level up and then severely overpower whatever you're coming up against, particularly in dungeons and bosses in dungeons and things like that.
Somebody's been putting in the work.
A grind can give you some benefits, but this game levels up differently than other games, thus why a grind isn't necessary. Each time you fight, random stats will level up. You never even know what you're going to get. It's just sort of a roll of the dice of which stats are going to go up, and even if any are going to go up. I think there's a pre-designated number with each character of what stats are actually going to go up, but that's not something I know for sure, so I'm not going to bring any conjecture in there. Fights, turn-based system, it does use the Glimmer system, similar to Romancing Saga 2, Revenge of the Seven. I mean, all the Romancing Saga games, as far as I'm aware, use this Glimmer system. You use an attack enough times, your character will glimmer, learn a new attack that hits a little harder, and you'll have to spend battle points to use those skills. Now, the interesting thing about this game is you build battle points each time you normal attack in each turn. So if you just use attack, you'll build up battle points. You can use a heavier attack later. This creates a very interesting form of strategy in which you kind of pull back at first, hold your punches a little bit, take some hits, and then when you're ready, you dish out as much damage as you can. I think that's kind of an interesting manner to go about the strategy. The formula of the battle system definitely isn't for everybody. It is a much more difficult system because it does not want you to grind. This game is meant to be a lot more difficult, I think. You know, that's depending on the person. Some people really like that extra difficulty. I'm not one that likes to, you know, have my nose to the grinder when it comes to difficulty, but that might be for some people. Now, as far as the story goes, like I said, each character has their own little story. I'm not going to go heavily into the stories. I will say that the two that I played, Albert, he's basically, you know, a noble that loses his home, loses his family, and is trying to find his way back through the world. And you have Gray, who's sort of a dark side of the world adventurer, and I really liked both the stories. I particularly liked Albert's. Albert's was very interesting. One big emphasis for me is this game's character design and overall world design is definitely not my particular taste. However, the stories were actually pretty well told and pretty well done. And the overall story is told through a minstrel who's retracing the story, kind of like in Romancing Saga 2, Revenge of the Seven. The entire game is being told through the voice of the minstrel. The minstrel at the beginning kind of looks like Jimmy Page. Anyway, as far as the stories go, they are actually, the two that I played are actually very good, and I can only imagine the rest of them are just as good as, you know, both Albert and Gray. As far as the aesthetics go, like I said, it's not really one that is appealing to me. It uses kind of a watercolor style with almost like a old school PS2 style chibi character modeling system, I guess. And in some cases it works. In this case, not so much. Everything does look pretty blocky, and for some reason, Sif has giant shoulders. I think it's because she's supposed to be kind of like a Viking-esque character, but it's really off-putting when you hear Sif's voice. It's just a little bit of a weird mashup. The music, what can I say? I mean, every single time I've played a Romancing Saga game, the music I wouldn't say is necessarily, I'm going to listen to it while I'm driving in the car, but while I'm playing it, it's atmospheric enough that it helps immerse into the game, in which I feel like I'm actually, when I'm walking through Albert's noble fortress, I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but when I'm walking through the fortress in Albert's story, the music feels like nobility. When I'm wandering out in the wilds, the music kind of feels like, you know, I'm at the edge of my seat. I don't know what's going to be popping around the corner. The music really isn't necessarily unforgettable, but it isn't bad either. It's pretty good. Just kind of summing everything up as far as I can, I would not say this is the best game I've ever played. I mean, I like the Romancing Saga overall turn-based battle system. I do think it's very interesting. The Glimmer system is really, really cool. The big problem I had with this game is because it removes the incentive to grind, it removes the ability to play the game like you would a normal jrpg. And that to me is kind of a downer. I'm not a big grinder when it comes to jrpgs, but at the same time, removing that, having to be able to huff it in battles and just cross my fingers, hope that I'm going to glimmer, you know, that creates a little bit of a rough situation, which I'm not a big fan of. Now, if you like difficult JRPG style games, this is a pretty good one. It is pretty difficult. It does have good stories, but overall, I'd say it's a little above average, just because the stories are good. The gameplay is honestly pretty good, but once again, not my top tier. So I'll put my review score on the screen now, and let me know what you think. The game comes out officially on December 9th, which is right around the corner, and that should be that. I hope you enjoyed the review. If you would be so kind as to hit the like, hit the subscribe, hit the bell, just in case, YouTube's algorithm is really weird, and that sometimes they don't like to tell people when I've posted stuff. So hit the bell so that way you know. And leave a comment. I do like to respond to comments. And I'll be having a video at some point soon in which I'll be responding to comments because I've had some pretty good ones recently. So in the meantime, we'll see you next time.